One of my favorite things to use in projects is silicone molds. I love to use them in paper crafting, and I love to use them in furniture makeovers. I love to use them in so many ways. But the problem is sometimes they can be a little bit pricey. Somewhere between $20 and $60 a mold. It can add up quickly. So when I stumbled across the video on TikTok on how to make your own silicone molds, I was all in. And so today, that's what we're going to do. DIY silicone molds. If you're new here, hey there, I'm Gina. I'm the girl behind the Shabby Creek Cottage. And around these parts, we like to make fun art, not fine art. So if you like to make fun art too, make sure that you hit the button and subscribe and ring the notification bell. Do all the YouTube things that, you know what to do. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment below. So without further ado, let's jump in and work on DIY silicone molds. You're going to start with silicone caulk, like you would find at the hardware store. Just make sure it's 100% silicone and it's clear. Then you're going to need some cornstarch, a bowl, a spoon, a mixing tool. I like the silicone mixing tool, as well as some parchment paper, and I like these powder pigments. Then you're going to need something to make your molds into. I used keys. You'll also need an embroidery hoop and a dowel rod, and you'll use that to roll it out. So you're going to start with some cornstarch, and you need to start with about 2-to-1 cornstarch to silicone caulk. So I put a big pile of cornstarch. This is a rough estimate, by the way. You're going to need a ton of cornstarch to do this. Maybe not the whole container, but you are going to need a lot. Make you a little nest of cornstarch, then start to squirt in your silicone caulk with a caulk gun, or you can use the tube kind that doesn't need a gun. Either way, you can see it's about 2-to-1. After I have that, then I use some more cornstarch to give the tool a coat of cornstarch to help it mix easier. Woo, that was a mouthful. But you're gonna start to mix it in. It's gonna feel like it won't mix in. This is the part where I'm gonna tell you it's gonna take much longer to mix this than you believe it should. It takes so long, and it feels like it's not going to come together, but eventually it does. And once it does, then you want to add in your powder pigment. I've tried this with liquids. I've tried this with paint. I've tried this project about 7 different times. Powder pigment worked the best. If you don't have powder pigment, I would suggest maybe just doing it plain white, and that works great too. I had some powder, so I used that, but I digress. Mix in powder and then just keep mixing it. Now, you're gonna need to add in more cornstarch until it gets to the consistency of Play-Doh instead of bubble gum. Here, ironically enough, it's pink, but it kind of has like a bubble gum texture, or maybe even a buttercream texture. This is still too wet. You need to add in more and more and more cornstarch until it's like it feels like Play-Doh. It'll be thick and it'll be kind of hard to mix together, but just keep going. I cut out a ton of it, but I probably added a spoonful of cornstarch about 5 or 6 more times while I was doing this, because it just takes so much cornstarch. And once you get it to where it's a Play-Doh type consistency, then you're going to start to pull it out and put it onto a piece of parchment paper. Now, if it feels like this and it looks like it's not going to come together, don't stress. Just keep stirring. You'll feel like you're stirring nothing, but I promise you, just keep moving it around. And as that caulk begins to absorb the cornstarch, it will thicken up. At first, I felt like I wasn't making much progress at all, but I just kept mixing and mixing and mixing. And you'll see now it's not stringy, it's more clumpy. Not clumpy, but it clumps together easier, and that's what I'm looking for. A Play-Doh consistency, not a buttercream consistency. Once I have it to that Play-Doh consistency, it's still going to be kind of sticky, so you're going to need more cornstarch. I put some on the top. Make sure you don't have any rings on for this step. I like mixing it with that silicone tool while it's in the bowl because I can clean that off later. This is hard to get off of anything, including your hands. So use dry hands with no jewelry and use lots of cornstarch and just keep kneading. And now you're going to knead until it's not sticky anymore. You're going to have to add in more and more cornstarch. You do it by sprinkling it on top and then working it in, or you can sprinkle it on your hands and work it in that way as well. I kind of went back and forth. If I felt like it was getting sticky on my hands, I would put the cornstarch on my hands. If I felt like my hands had plenty of cornstarch, then I would put it directly into the silicone mixture. We'll just call it the mixture. I just kept going back and forth between putting it on there and putting it in it versus on it over and over until I got it pliable and it was soft and smooth. Once it didn't feel sticky anymore, I knew I was ready to roll it out. It's going to be kind of tough feeling. It will feel very, very tough. It's much denser than Play-Doh will feel. More like I honestly don't even have a reference for it, but it'll be pretty stiff stuff. I used an embroidery hoop to roll it out with a dowel rod before I put some keys in. I will tell you, don't pick anything that's too thick and don't pick anything that's too detailed, because it'll be harder to get your mold properly, to do it properly. And when you go to do these, I do use some of the keys with paper clay on this, but I also recommend using resin on really fine detail parts. I did also use the dowel rod to roll the keys in a little, so I got a really good deep indentation, and then I'd let it dry overnight before pulling the keys out. Then when you go to use it, it's dry and it works just like any other silicone mold. A little bit of cornstarch, a little bit of paper clay, and then you're good to go. And you can actually use this just like you would one that you bought. This is a really great technique. If you've never made your own silicone molds, I'm telling you, they can be kind of pricey. So if you make your own, even if you do waste some cornstarch and a little bit of silicone to test it in the beginning, it still comes out to be a lot better on your budget, and you can get a lot more bang for your DIY buck if you make these yourself instead of buy them from an online shop. So give it a try, and if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below.